It was really a family decision. And there was a point where my husband was like, don't you want to do this? You wanted to do this, right? And so let's do it if this is something that you want to do. And so the nerd that I am, when we were having the conversation of like, am I really going to do this? I pulled out the statistics of folks who get PhDs and the divorce rate. And I was like, hey, man, I need you to know I don't want this to happen. So this is what I'm going to need from you. I need you to pick up the kids. I need you to make dinner. I need you to leave me alone when I need you to leave me alone. I need support in order to get this done.
Welcome to the Writing on My Mind podcast. This is where we discuss all things related to the doctoral journey. On this show, I share personal stories and bring some friends along for revealing conversations about their journey and provide inspiration for others to level up as doc students. I'm your host, Dr. Emanuela Stanislaus. I'm a doctorate coach and diversity consultant. I finished my doctorate in 4 years while working full-time, traveling the world, and balancing a busy social life. And now I'm on a mission to create community for other women of color to complete their doctoral degrees. This is real talk to help you along your doctoral journey. Now, let's get to the show. Hello, everyone. Dr. Emanuela Stanislaus here, and I am back with another episode of the Writing on My Mind podcast. And today I have yet another special guest to chat a little bit about her experience pursuing her doctorate degree. I'm here with my friend, Dr. Tania Abouzeide, and she is the lead consultant and founder of Wayfinder Educational Consulting, where she specializes in the comprehensive college admissions process, academic advising, and coaching for college-bound students. Dr. Abouzeide is a professor of higher education, and she held leadership positions in higher education administration. Dr. Abouzeide is dedicated to assisting students in securing post-secondary educational opportunities while incorporating professional well-being practices. And so I'd like to welcome you to the show today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I am so excited to have you. As I shared in the beginning, you are a friend. And for those who don't know, Tania and I both pursued our doctorate in the same program at the same institution. We we shared the same chair as well, and had different experiences, which we may chat a little bit about today. And so we've never really gone into depth into our individual experiences. And so I'm looking forward to chatting a little bit about that today and hopefully inspiring others through your story.
Thank you, Emanuela, for having me. I'm so excited and I'm so proud of you and all of your accomplishments as well. It's been a journey as you and I have both gone through the same program with the same chair, but had, the same challenges actually as women of color, Black women, Haitian American women pursuing a PhD.
Definitely, for sure. And so why don't we just jump right into it? Tell us a little bit about what it was like pursuing your PhD and your whole journey.
Yeah, so I pursued my PhD as a full time employee working at another institution, overseeing several programs and a unit, while also being a mom to my two beautiful young daughters and being a spouse as well, still trying to manage all of the daily responsibilities that I had, left and right. And so I really don't know how I did it other than the sheer drive that I had at the time, but it was very difficult and very challenging and the hardest thing that I ever had to do in my life. But I would certainly do it again because I believe that it's important for individuals to model challenges and that we can overcome challenges, particularly with Black women. And it was something that I wanted to do for myself, more importantly. It was on my to-do list, if you will. And I know that I'm extremely privileged in even saying that, but it was certainly something that I wanted to accomplish for a greater purpose outside of myself, although I felt like it was something that I had to do for myself.
That's a great point. So, you know, you were driven by so many things, but like, was there anything specific that kind of influenced you to go on this long, rough journey towards the PhD?
Yeah, so working in higher education for what 17 years now, I realized, and even at the time where I decided to pursue a doctoral program, was that I need these three letters behind my name in order to have a certain level of credibility and respect. And it was something that I had witnessed with other colleagues of mine. And so if I wanted to stay in academia, if I wanted to stay in higher education, this was something that I needed to have in order to, for lack of a better word, have clout, if you will. Because as you know, and maybe that you've experienced, the ivory tower realm and perspective and environment is real. It's very real, and there is a certain level of respect that does come with having those letters behind your name. The second component to that is I know that in order to be respected outside of academia, but still working within a higher education realm, those three letters after my name make a big difference as well.
For sure. As you speak, you're really helping me to reflect on my journey towards the PhD program too. And it was you look around and you see the folks who are able to move up and they have their doctorate. You talk to mentors or maybe, you know, folks who kind of are in those pseudo mentorship roles. And, you know, you talk about like, oh, I want to pursue a role that looks like this. And a lot of times they will encourage you to pursue that doctorate. And so I definitely can relate to that. And then, two, we're both consultants as well, and thinking about how that doctorate really translates well in the outside world, right? And how that really helps to build some level of credibility and trust among some of these corporate organizations, or if you're doing consulting with other higher ed institutions. So definitely can relate to that and understand that point of view. And I think a lot of our listeners would think about that too, because I think some folks are really thinking about the consulting piece as a potential career path for themselves. So thank you for sharing that. I know one thing too that you kind of shared that we haven't really talked about on this show, surprisingly, but I definitely want to talk about is balancing the doctorate with children. You have two daughters, two beautiful daughters. And like, what did that look like for you? Because again, like I said, we haven't explored that really. What sacrifices, I guess, did you have to make, and how did you go about balancing that? And any advice for other folks who are thinking about that or are currently trying to balance caregiving and along with their academic pursuits?
I think that the only way that I was going to be successful in completing the arduous process of doing a PhD is support. Had I not had the support of my husband, had I not had the support of my family, my parents, my sister, my in laws, it would have been outside of Jesus Christ himself coming down to help me, it would have been extremely impossible for me to be successful, and it would have taken me much longer to complete. And so when you make this decision, folks may sometimes think that you're making it in a vacuum of like, this is something that I just want for me. It was really a family decision. And there was a point where my husband was like, don't you want to do this? You wanted to do this, right? And so let's do it if this is something that you want to do. And so the nerd that I am, when we were having the conversation of like, am I really going to do this? I pulled out the statistics of folks who get PhDs and the divorce rate. And I was like, hey man, I need you to know, I don't want this to happen. So this is what I'm going to need from you. I need you to pick up the kids. I need you to make dinner. I need you to leave me alone when I need you to leave me alone. I need support in order to get this done. And as you know, you go through several different phases just within the doctoral journey. You have like just the classes phase, which is, to me, completely irrelevant to the entire process. It's like, it's a lie, right? So you go to your classes and there's just like that part. And so not being there, not being available to my kids, or just being tired after working a long day and then having to drive to campus to sit in a session for 2.5 hours and come see my kids, hopefully they should be sleeping, but they're not, right? And then having to deal with that, and I'm hungry and I'm going to have tacos, and just like all of that, or what work didn't I get done? It can be extremely stressful and totally overwhelming. But had I not had the support that I had, it would have been virtually impossible for me to complete my degree.
Definitely amazing, advice that you just shared there. And again, too, you're just helping me to really remember some of those tough conversations as well. I know personally, it took me a while to like learn to advocate for myself. Was that easy for you? How did you find your voice to be able to ask for what you need, and how did you navigate that process?
Wow, wow. The guilt alone, the self-imposed guilt that I had for not being around. There were weekends where I just had to like hide in the library to work. Those were very tough moments. And those are the moments where you're questioning, why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? And so the mom guilt just is part of being a mom, but the mom guilt on top of, you're doing this degree now, maybe you could wait, maybe just wait like 10 years, and they'll be a little bit older and more self-sufficient. So for context, my when I started my PhD, my eldest daughter was 4 and my baby was a baby. And so she was like 6 months when I started, or 8 months. And so, yeah, that was not easy. It was very tough. But I think anyone who decides to do this, take this journey, has to know has to know that you need to have mental fortitude to get this done. The internal drive and motivation is a prerequisite for this. And so I forgot your question, but does that answer it?
Yeah, it was about how did you advocate for yourself?
Oh, how did I advocate? So besides like the guilt, when I had to get over the guilt, that was step one. I realized that I had a lot of guilt that I was dealing with and it wasn't helping me be productive. And so it was like a double whammy, like, oh man, I'm guilty and I'm not seeing my kids. But also if I'm taking the time to not do what I need to do to hang out with the family and, be present, then I'm not making any progress. I'm just going to be doing this for so long. So I had to make a decision to really have a vulnerable, uncomfortable, tense conversation of like, hey, this is what I need. I need time to do this. And so, how are you going to help me? And I have some suggestions if you don't have any. And so, once I got over the guilt, it was then where I could effectively action plan and come up with a strategy that was a happy medium for everyone involved.
Awesome. I think you gave a lot of practical advice that folks can, kind of utilize. And for me, like I said, that was very difficult for me to, first of all, realize that I was overwhelmed and not really doing the things that I needed to do well enough. And my husband was very similar to yours too, where he was the person who knew the goal. It was a family decision, like you said. And we did everything and structured everything around that goal to make it so that we were focused on it and set up so that I could be successful as well. But, even with that in mind, I still didn't know how to ask for what I needed until, later on in the program. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure folks will find value in what you shared as well. So let's talk a little bit about being a woman of color pursuing your doctorate. Like you said, Haitian American, we both identify as Black women. What was it like for you being a Black woman pursuing your doctorate in your program?
So, because I was in, I guess, let's say three different worlds, I was in my work professional world. It looked very different from my home world, which also looked very different from my peer colleagues in class world. And the differences were extreme, as you can imagine. So I'll start with, the home world, coming from, Caribbean background, Haitian American. It's like, oh my gosh, when are you gonna finish, my doctor? Oh my God, like we can't wait for you to finish so we could, brag about how you're a doctor, right? And so it was very encouraging and supportive and wonderful, and motivating. My work world was filled with varied comments of microaggressions, like, oh, really, which is very loaded. Also, some demeaning comments in terms of, well, you don't really need a doctorate to like do this job or to work here, right? Well, are you going to teach? And the questions that are kind of loaded in the sense of like, you're questioning me, right? You're not questioning me doing my degree, right? You're questioning the fact that I'm a Black person, a Black woman, who's very intelligent, and nobody else that's here has this. So why are you doing this? So there was all of that where I literally just had to tune out. And even, sometimes they would say things like, oh, but like, what kind of PhD is it? Is it an EDD? Like that's something inferior to a PhD. I'm like, a doctorate is a doctorate, guys. Um, so let's not act like that. And this was coming from folks that were or are intelligent, intellectuals, and academics too. So I got it from all over in the professional side, and then in the classroom, man, you're just there. We're all trying to do this thing together. And it's like, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. And so there's a sense of community there. I also want to say that I did this with a couple of friends of mine that, did their doctorates at other universities, various universities in various disciplines. And we all kind of started around the same time. And so that was also a sense of community that I had, where I'm like, okay, I'm not just doing this on my own.
Wow, Tanya, you just shared a lot there that definitely is concerning, right? The microaggressions and all of these kinds of things that are kind of loaded, the EDD versus PhD conversation that is never ending. Maybe one day I'll have a podcast episode just on that. And to your point, the right answer is a doctorate is a doctorate. And so let's not, put these various levels that just continues to create divisions within folks.
Yeah, let's not create division and a hierarchy in higher education more so than what's already existing. And, there were times where I could have responded, or could have just been even more passive aggressive. But I'm like, you guys are not going to be part of my world in like 5 years. So I'm going to just keep it moving, right? Because sometimes it's just really not worth it for real, right? And so that's that.
So true. Keeping your eye on the prize because these people are just detractors. So not focusing on that and focusing too on what you talked about earlier too with the sense of community. And that may look different for a variety of folks. You were very lucky to have like a built-in community of people you already knew who were pursuing your doctorate, which that is a blessing for sure. And other folks have to build it, right? And find folks who they can trust, who they can rely on for support. And so that's going to look a little different for everyone. So, based off of that, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started your program?
So I had heard about this, or this was a piece of advice that was given to me before I started, which was you don't have to save the world in your dissertation. And I heard it over and over again, but it really wasn't until you're in chapter 4 and you're like, I don't care anymore. I don't have to save the world. That really it started to stick for me then. And so I wish I would have known that, because I probably would have put myself through less mental anguish had I really internalized that. But when you're green and you're jumping into something, you think but you really don't, until like you're in it, knee deep in it, and you're like, oh wait, I really can't save the world with this dissertation that I don't really know who's even going to read this, so let me just make the best of it as much as I can, because really and truly it's the work after that makes the difference.
For sure, totally. Just get it done. A done dissertation is the best dissertation. And then, you can do things outside of that dissertation related to your research, right? Like publishing articles or maybe even developing a book. There's so many things that you can do following that. So great advice for that, for sure. And I know, on the flip side, I know we're talking about maybe some traumas related to pursuing the doctorate, right? But one of the things that I kind of want to explore a little bit more on the podcast are like the joys associated with it too. And so, from your point of view, like what joy did the doctorate process or even journey bring you?
So one moment stands out to me, and that is during my qualitative interviews. So I did my dissertation on the experiences of for-profit college graduates, and I conducted an interview with one of my participants. And you come in there, you're not supposed to, right? You're supposed to be objective, but you come in there with your preconceived biases, right? And although you try to minimize that as much as possible, so I already came in there like, I wonder what she's going to tell me that I don't already know. And as she explained and we walked over her process of attending a for-profit institution, from pre-enrollment through during being a student, and hearing her life experiences while she was a student, to graduating. And as she told her story to me, we were crying at the end, right? Because she had been through a lot: grief, loss, single mother, doing her thing, just trying to make a better situation for herself and her family. And the words that she said to me were, this school was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Getting this degree, these degrees, right? She had started with an associate, bachelor's, master's. She, at the end of our conversation, wanted to continue to pursue a doctorate degree, because essentially her life had changed because of this experience. And for me, that was the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, this is the work. This is the point. This is the impact, where we tell ourselves these stories and we come in with our biases on what's a good school, what's not a good school, what's a good experience, what's academic quality. We come in with all of our jargon and junk, and really emphasizing the student experience. These are lives that we're talking about here. These are people whose lives have been greatly impacted, and for the majority of my participants, for the better. And so that was a point of learning and a point of joy, where I was like, this is the work, this is the impact, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I love that story. And that really resonates with me too, because that's the reason why I do this podcast. I am a qualitative researcher through and through, and I believe in the power of stories. And, through these conversations, I do get folks who are motivated to continue along the path, or now they know more about the process, because we're demystifying it, right, and having real conversations where folks can kind of anticipate what they might experience in the journey. So totally understand that. And even with your research to for profits, like you said, we all have our opinions on various things, but they do provide access to folks who may not get into other schools, right? Now, some of their practices are predatory in nature. And of course, there's so many other things associated with that, but they do um, provide folks an opportunity to get higher education that they otherwise would not get.
Yes, don't get me started on all of that, right? This is not a podcast on my dissertation, but you are exactly right. They do provide access and opportunities to students that otherwise may not have had the opportunity. And really the point of my dissertation was to highlight, why are these schools, quote unquote, subpar institutions, doing the work that traditional schools should be doing? Why? And I'm still asking that question, but it's a very valid question, because behind all of the predatory practices, the student loan default rates, all of the negative, bad stuff, yes, there's shadiness all around it. But let's not act like the traditional nonprofit higher education world is exempt from those exact same shady, recruiting, questionable practices as well.
Preach.
Don't get me started.
Ooh, that's another podcast topic. But yes, you're right. I think you're right to still continue to question that. Why is it that some get the bad rap while others don't? So,
Right. I
yeah.
mean, when you think about the different sectors within higher education, I understand that there's going to be a tier system. But if traditional colleges and schools were really doing the work that they should be doing, the for profit sector would not exist. It just wouldn't.
Mm,
So, period on that.
period. Love it. So, I think this is a good time to kind of talk about, what are you doing now, and how does what you're doing now kind of relate to your research, your dissertation topic?
So I enjoyed teaching, but the traditional faculty route wasn't my jam. My jam is working with individuals in terms of helping them figure out the college admissions game, which it is a game, right? And so what I do now is, yes, I specialize in comprehensive college admissions counseling for undergraduate, graduate students as well. And this does include educating parents, this does include educating first gen folks, second gen folks. This includes continuing education folks as well, because 20 years ago, the college admissions game looked very, very different. Right now, we are talking about high stakes. We are talking about continuous scandals, fraud. We are talking about pay for play, and we are talking about missed opportunities for folks like us, folks that look like us. And we're talking about an unintended ignorance and the think within the box perspective. And what I do and what I love to do is educate and inform folks on what's happening, what's the real deal, as a person who worked in higher education for many, many years, and also to bring out new opportunities, institutions, programs to folks who would not ordinarily know, right? We know the traditional route. Okay, graduate from high school, get into a top 50 school, go about your business, get your, six-figure job with your six-figure loan debt and make it happen. That doesn't work anymore. It hasn't been working for quite some time. And so what I enjoy and my purpose is really to help families navigate and through sift through all of this information and marketing that is thrown at them to help students and families make a good decision. It's not about the school, it's about the fit. What's going to be a good fit for you? We all love a brand name item. I love luxury items and brand names myself, but an education is something that you really cannot put a price tag on, and we shouldn't be selling luxury education. It's just education. And so what I want to learn, I could, I don't have to particularly go to one, school over another. We could all just YouTube it, right? But it's more so than just that. It's the experience. It's the access to social capital. It's the access to experiences and opportunities that have historically excluded folks like you and I. And so that's what I do in a nutshell through Wayfinder.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think your services are so needed. I think that the admissions process, like you said, it just continues to get more and more muddled. And it is increasingly through, the scandals that we see that folks can pay their way to a university or be born into legacies to gain access to some of these top tier and that's air quotes institutions. And it's the process is muddled and probably intentionally, right? I question everything. And, it really is a high stakes situation for first generation students specifically. And so definitely see a great value in the services that you do. And I love too that you're not only focusing on undergrad admissions, but also grad admissions as well. So super proud of you and all of the things that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, graduate admissions and master's degrees are a whole other podcast topic, but it's just as important, if not more important, for students to understand the game when it comes to graduate studies as well.
So I know you started telling your story about how you were working full time pursuing your doctorate, and now you are doing the whole entrepreneurship route. And so you want to share a little bit about that and kind of like what inspired the shift over to doing your own thing?
Yeah, so pandemic gave us a lot of time for reflection, right? And so I was working full time. I was running a department servicing graduate students, and it was great. I loved it. I did it for 7 years at that particular institution. And what was happening to me at the time was I finished my PhD. I graduated, didn't have a graduation, just still kind of kept working. And there was a sense of, why did I do this? Who did I do this for? A lot of questioning and a lot of, I think, maybe withdrawal is what I would call it. After being in this process for 6 years of my life and walking around with it everywhere I went, this was like my identity, and not having any recognition after that was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I don't like this. And so I started the process of really deep reflection, journaling, praying, all of that to figure out, okay, so then what's next? I had an idea of what I thought would be next, but coronavirus, here you go. But I'm also very thankful for that, because without that time to pause and think about what is it that I really want to do with this new chapter in my life, I probably would have just kept it moving, just stayed in the same area or tried to move up in that institution. which I knew was slowly eating away at me because my sense of fulfillment and purpose was just kind of, going down in flames. And so it was through that process that I thought, okay, I need to do something for others. And, I came up with the name Wayfinder because it's descriptive. I help people find their way, and I wanted the name to be descriptive, but in helping others find their way, I find mine. And so that was important for me to recognize, to honor, and to do. And so I jumped into the whole academic entrepreneurship world where I get to utilize my skills, my gifts, my talents, my knowledge in a way that I have control over to service others. And I have no regrets. It's the best decision that I've ever made. And I'm loving it. And extremely happy with all the different impacts that I'm making in the lives of my clients, which include, families, students, and whatnot. So that's been the biggest blessing of this whole process for me.
Definitely. I know a lot of folks can relate to the pandemic, just creating this sense of trying to find your way, haha, not wayfinder. So, just times of deep reflection. And I think we just really had a chance to sit still and just reevaluate where we were and seeing if we were okay with where we were versus running and not really having that time to really reflect and evaluate, how we were feeling about where we were at, whether it's career wise, whether it's academic wise, or even where you live. A lot of people like decided to, redo their homes or leave, right? And move into bigger houses or smaller houses or RV, like, RV life. So I definitely understand that. And I appreciate you sharing your story because it really uh, helps me to see how deep your mission is in helping other folks, and in turn that helping you to find your way towards where you're meant to be. So thank you so much for sharing that. So I know we talked about your daughters and everything, and that being a big part of your journey. What do they think of you, of mom being a doctor?
Oh, they love it. They know the difference between, me being a PhD as opposed to an MD doctor, but they love it. And now that I've joined the academic entrepreneurship world, for them, it's like, oh, wow, you're your own boss, mommy? Like, you don't have a boss anymore? And I'm like, well, my clients are kind of my boss. I work with them, I help them, but no, I'm the boss. And so for them, it's modeling that you can do what you want to do on your own terms. And my hope is for them to know and learn this and internalize it from now, as opposed to being, 40 years old and starting over because you had your aha moment. I think as first gen, as our cultural background is, we have to navigate through the limits that are imposed for fear and safety and all of that. But I think for what I'm trying to do with my girls is show them that yes, you can be an artist, you can be a musician, you can be whatever it is that you want to be on your own terms. But guess what? You still got to have an education to do that. And so that's what I try to, teach my young ladies here.
I love that. And so right now, I want to shift over to the lightning round questions. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay, so this is a time where I just ask you a question and you just answer as quickly as you can with the first thing that comes to mind. So, first thing, what was your favorite mantra as a doc student?
Get it done.
Love it.
It's a bad
Relatable.
it's a bad one, but it was just get it done. Just get it done. Write this paper really quick.
Love it. Okay, one thing you couldn't live without as a doc student.
Wine. I needed the wine. After writing, or researching, you go down these rabbit holes, you need to come out of that. And a nice glass of some red wine certainly helped to get me all together.
You know, the funny story, I remember our chair one time in a class, he said how he grades papers while drinking wine, and that was all of the, advice and permission. That was all of the permission that I needed to know, like, "Oh, hey, you can drink a glass of wine while you're writing this paper. It's okay.
It's okay.
We're an adult."
Let the words flow.
Exactly, exactly. So, yeah, I totally agree. So, what was your favorite hype song?
Oh, I would say it's oh my gosh, rest in peace DMX, right? Y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here, up in here. I felt like I was losing my mind at some point. So that song was like it got me hyped, like, okay, we're gonna get this done.
I love it. That's a
Nothing
good
like
one.
some DMX to, get you all hyped up, right?
Yeah, I love it. Love that. RIP DMX. Yay. What was your go-to practice to celebrate your wins?
I have two: retail therapy and food. So I would have these study or writing sessions with a friend of mine, and we would say, like, okay, we got to hit our goals. So that way, after we can go to the mall and shop and get some food, and that's our reward. So that was the reward. That's what we did, and it worked.
Fun. Love that. Yes. Nothing like good food and retail therapy too. Love it. And then lastly, best piece of advice that you received as a doc student.
I think I mentioned this earlier about a dissertation. A done dissertation is still a dissertation. You don't have to save the world in your dissertation. So focus on your problem, write about it, do your research. If it's qualitative, tell the stories of your participants. But essentially, you don't have to save the entire world in one dissertation. So once I was able to internalize that helped the mental blocks just flow out.
Love it. Yeah. You don't have to save the world and you can't save the world.
Right.
So,
Exactly. You can't do it anyway, so it's fine.
yeah. Why try to do the impossible?
Why? Yeah.
Love it. Thank you for participating. Thank you for um, being a great guest on the show and sharing your experience. And I totally know that folks will be inspired by your story. And I want to make sure that you are able to share with folks how they can connect with you or follow you.
Yes, of course. So I'm very active on Instagram at Dr.Abouzeide. That is Dr. Abouzeide. I am posting my Wayfinder Wednesday web series on YouTube. Just type in your Wayfinder all together. There, my website is yourwayfinder.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as Tania Abouzeide as well. And there you go. So, yes, that's what it is.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And I will also add that to the show notes. So if you want to connect with Tanya, you can definitely check out the show notes and connect with her if you need any type of assistance with admissions or know folks who could use that information, both undergrad as well as grad. Definitely check her out. She is good people. And again, thank you so much, Tanya, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a blast, as you can tell. And I'm really excited that you're able to give a voice and give some context in terms of how to get through this thing called a doctoral degree, because it's very hard and very difficult to communicate to others that don't know, unless if you're like kind of in it, like this weird club that we're all in, that I want and I wish more of us would do, because the doors that it opens are just kind of endless. And so I'm super excited to be here and to contribute. And thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Writing on My Mind podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, make sure you follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts, rate the show, and leave a comment on Apple Podcast. You can also donate to the show by clicking the support link in the show notes. Your donations help me to continue to put out new episodes to help support you and other women of color doctoral students. I'd also love it if you could spread the word to other women of color doctoral students to grow our community. Be sure to also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Dr. Emanuela. That's DrEmmanuela. See you on the next episode.